As the judge brought down his gavel in the crowded courtroom, the disabled veteran sat silently in his wheelchair. The landlord was celebrating his victory, but when the judge put on his glasses to get a clearer look at the veteran's face, the file in his hands dropped to the floor. Hold on a minute. As you listened to that scene, what was the first thing that crossed your mind? First, write in the comments where you're listening from and what went through your mind. We give voice to forgotten heroes, and every day we share one story, but that story sometimes has the power to shake a society's conscience. If you value these stories, subscribe, hit the like button, turn on notifications, because the story about to begin isn't just about one man, it's about all of us. Are you ready? Then let's begin. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside Apartments in Phoenix, Arizona, as Michael Torres carefully maneuvered his wheelchair toward the mailbox cluster near the front office. At 38, Michael carried himself with the quiet dignity that comes from having served something greater than yourself, even though his days of standing tall in military formation were now just memories. The apartment complex was nothing special, a collection of two-story buildings painted in faded beige, surrounded by struggling palm trees and patches of desert landscaping that had seen better days. For most residents, it was a temporary stop on their way to something better. For Michael and his family, it had become home for the past 3 years. Michael's wheelchair, a standard VA-issued model, moved smoothly across the cracked asphalt. His upper body strength, developed through years of physical therapy and determination, made navigating the chair look effortless to casual observers. What they couldn't see were the fragments of shrapnel still lodged near his spine, souvenirs from an IED explosion in Afghanistan that had changed the trajectory of his life forever. Inside apartment 247, Maria Torres was helping their 2 children get ready for school. 8-year-old Sophia was carefully braiding her younger brother Diego's hair, a responsibility she had taken on since their father's injury had made certain tasks more challenging. "Is Papi coming to school today?" Diego asked, his face lighting up with hope. Maria smiled, though worry flickered in her eyes. "No, mijo. Papi has to talk to the landlord today, but maybe he can come tomorrow." The truth was, Maria hadn't told her husband about the letter from the landlord for 3 days. What it contained would break the family's heart, an eviction notice for late rent payments. Michael's VA benefits provided steady income, but it wasn't enough. Maria worked part-time for a cleaning company, but the hours were inconsistent. Michael's medical expenses, prosthetic maintenance, and physical therapy sessions created a constant drain on the family budget. When Michael reached the mailbox in the parking lot, what he found inside made his blood run cold: a court summons. Landlord Richard Morrison had filed formal eviction proceedings. Richard Morrison was a 45-year-old successful real estate investor. He owned 12 properties around Phoenix and considered himself a tough but fair businessman. Richard's office was on the 12th floor of a gleaming glass building downtown, with large windows overlooking the city. That morning, Richard sat at his desk while his lawyer, Janet Powers, briefed him on the Torres case. 3 months of back rent, Janet said, shuffling through the file. "Being disabled doesn't make any legal difference. If he can't pay, he has to go." Richard frowned. "Does he have children?" "2 kids. But let's not get emotional, Richard. This is business, not personal." Richard turned to the window. In his 10-year real estate career, he had conducted countless evictions. In his eyes, Michael Torres fell into the category of tenants who had overextended themselves financially, another case of someone taking on obligations they couldn't handle. "Let's go to court," Richard said. "Get this handled quickly and move on to the next one." When court day arrived, Michael went to the Maricopa County courthouse with Maria and the children. The old building stood amid heavy Phoenix traffic, surrounded by lawyers and people seeking justice. As Michael entered the courtroom in his wheelchair, he felt nervous but determined. He had prepared his case. There were late payments but no complete non-payments. He had tried to pay something every month. He hoped his military background and family situation would bring understanding to the court. Judge David Chen was a 62-year-old experienced jurist. In his 25-year career, he had seen thousands of cases but always tried to maintain his humane approach. He was especially careful with cases involving veterans. He himself had served in Vietnam. The courtroom was packed with other cases. Michael's case was the 5th of the day. Torres versus Morrison, called the court clerk. Richard stood confidently beside his lawyer. Michael waited silently in his wheelchair while Maria squeezed his hand. Judge Chen opened the file and quickly reviewed the situation. "Mr. Morrison, state your claims." Richard's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client requests eviction of the tenant due to 3 months of unpaid rent. The total debt is $4,800. The judge turned to Michael. "Mr. Torres, What is your response to these allegations? Michael took a deep breath. Your Honor, it's true that I've had payment difficulties. However, I tried to pay something every month. There was no month when I made no payment at all. I am a disabled veteran and my family needs this home. Judge Chen looked up and put on his glasses to get a clearer view of Michael's face. At that moment, as Michael's features became clear, the judge froze. The file in his hands dropped to the floor. Sergeant Torres, he whispered. The courtroom fell silent. Michael looked confused. Your Honor, Michael said, his voice filled with uncertainty. Judge Chen stood up, his eyes never leaving Michael. Michael Torres, 3rd Infantry Brigade. Kandahar? Michael's eyes widened. Yes, Your Honor, but I don't recognize you. Judge Chen approached Michael. Lieutenant David Chen, March 15, 2009, during the roadside checkpoint outside Kandahar base. Suddenly Michael's memory came alive. That day, that terrible day, the day the roadside bomb exploded. Their vehicle flipped over, the young lieutenant trapped under the wreckage. My God, Michael said, I saved you. Not just me, Judge Chen said, his voice trembling with emotion. You saved 4 people in that vehicle that day, without caring about your own injuries. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Richard Morrison couldn't understand what was happening. Judge Chen turned to the courtroom. I'm calling a 15-minute recess on this case. During the recess, Judge Chen called Michael to his private chambers. While Maria and the children waited in the hallway, the 2 men, one the former sergeant, the other the former lieutenant, faced each other after 15 years. Michael, Judge Chen said, if it weren't for you that day, I wouldn't be here. My wife and children would have been left without a father. Michael nodded. It was our duty, Your Honor. We were all there for each other. No, the judge said firmly. Duty didn't force you to go back to that burning vehicle 3 times while you were injured. Duty didn't force you to carry severely wounded soldiers to safety while ignoring your own safety. Judge Chen looked out his window. What happened to you after that day? Michael's voice carried years of struggle. The IED blast damaged my spine. Long rehabilitation process. Discharged from the army. House, job, medical expenses. It's been difficult. Michael, I need you to know that not a day has passed since that day that I haven't thought about what you did. You didn't just save my life, you saved the lives of 4 other soldiers, and you did it while you were badly injured yourself. Judge Chen continued. I tried to track you down several times over the years, but you had disappeared into the civilian world. I wanted to thank you properly. Michael was quiet for a moment. The hardest part isn't the physical disability, sir. It's the way people look at me now. Before I was wounded, I was Staff Sergeant Torres, a leader, someone people could count on. Now I'm just another disabled veteran that society feels sorry for. Judge Chen faced Michael directly. Sergeant, you may be sitting in a wheelchair, but you are still the same man who risked his life to save 5 soldiers in Afghanistan. Your worth as a human being hasn't diminished because of your injuries. Try telling that to the employers who won't hire me, or the landlords who see me as a risk, Michael replied. The judge was quiet for several minutes. Michael, I want you to know that I never forgot what you did for me and the others. I named my son after you, David Michael Chen. Every time I see him, I think about the fact that he exists because you were willing to die for strangers. Michael's eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do that, sir. Yes, I did, because heroes should be remembered, not forgotten. And you, Sergeant Michael Torres, are a hero whether you're standing or sitting. Judge Chen stood up. Now let's go back to that courtroom and address this eviction case. But first I want you to know that regardless of what legal remedies I can offer, I'm going to make sure you get the recognition and assistance you should have received years ago. When court resumed, the atmosphere had changed completely. Judge Chen took his seat and addressed the courtroom with renewed authority. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the legal proceedings, I want to share some information that is relevant to this case. On March 15, 2009, then Sergeant Michael Torres saved my life and the lives of 4 other American soldiers during an enemy attack in Afghanistan. While wounded himself, Sergeant Torres made multiple trips under enemy fire to rescue soldiers trapped in a burning vehicle. The judge paused to let this information sink in. Sergeant Torres was later wounded by an IED explosion that left him permanently disabled. He received multiple military decorations, including the Bronze Star with Valor, and was medically retired from the army. Richard Morrison felt something shift inside his chest, a mixture of shame and growing respect for the man he had been trying to evict. This wasn't just another tenant trying to avoid paying rent. This was a genuine American hero. Judge Chen turned his attention to the legal matter. Mr. Torres, you have presented evidence of partial rent payments made consistently over the past 3 months. While these payments don't fulfill the complete terms of your lease, they demonstrate good faith effort to meet your obligations despite significant financial hardship. The judge continued. Mr. Morrison, your legal position is technically sound. Rent payments are due as specified in the lease agreement. However, this court has discretion to consider exceptional circumstances. Mr. Torres, Judge Chen said, you have requested a 6-month payment plan to resolve your rent arrearages. Do you believe you can meet those obligations while maintaining current rent payments? Yes, Your Honor. My wife has been offered additional work hours, and I've been accepted into a vocational rehabilitation program that should lead to employment. Judge Chen turned to Richard Morrison. Mr. Morrison, I'm ordering a 6-month payment plan as requested by the defendant. This will resolve the arrearages without requiring you to find a new tenant. Richard Morrison stood up slowly. The revelation about Michael's military service had changed his entire view of the situation. Your Honor, may I address the court? You may, Mr. Morrison. Richard walked toward the center of the courtroom. He had entered the courthouse that morning, focused on profit margins and contractual obligations. Now he found himself face to face with a man who embodied values that Richard had forgotten. Your Honor, Sergeant Torres, Richard began, his voice carrying none of its earlier confidence. I came here today thinking this was a simple case of a tenant who couldn't pay his bills. I had no idea who you were or what you had done for our country. Richard paused, struggling with emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. My grandfather served in World War II. He used to tell me stories about the men who saved his life. He always said that every American owes a debt to the soldiers who were willing to die for strangers. The courtroom was completely silent as Richard continued. Sergeant Torres, I don't need a payment plan from you. I'm forgiving the entire debt, all $4,800. Your rent is current as of today. Gasps and murmurs erupted throughout the courtroom. Maria covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Michael sat stunned, unable to process what he was hearing. Furthermore, Richard continued, I'm reducing your monthly rent to $1,000 and I'm offering you a 5-year lease at that rate. This should give you stability while you get back on your feet. Judge Chen smiled. Mr. Morrison, that's a generous resolution that demonstrates the best qualities of community support for our veterans. Richard walked over to Michael and extended his hand. Sergeant Torres, I owe you an apology. I judged you without knowing your story. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. Michael shook Richard's hand firmly. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Your kindness means more to my family than you'll ever know. No, Richard replied. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and for reminding me what really matters in life. As the proceedings concluded, Judge Chen called Michael forward one more time. Sergeant, I want you to have my personal contact information. I'm going to help you navigate the VA system to make sure you're receiving all the benefits you're entitled to. I'm also going to connect you with veteran service organizations and employers who specifically hire disabled veterans. Michael nodded gratefully. Thank you, Your Honor, for everything. Michael, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You gave me a second chance at life 15 years ago. Today I got the chance to return the favor. That evening, the Torres family celebrated at home with a dinner that felt like a holiday. Sofia and Diego still didn't fully understand everything that had happened in the courtroom, but they knew their family was safe and their home was secure. As Maria tucked the children into bed, Diego asked, Mommy, is Papi really a hero? Maria smiled and kissed her son's forehead. Yes, mi Coria, your father is a hero. Not because someone said so in court today, but because every day he gets up and takes care of his family, even when things are hard. Later that night, Michael sat on the small balcony of apartment 247, looking out at the lights of Phoenix. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten, hope. Not just for his family's immediate security, but for the possibility that his military service still had meaning, and that his future could be brighter than his past. Maria joined him on the balcony. What are you thinking about? She asked. I'm thinking about Judge Chen and how strange life can be. 15 years ago, I pulled him out of a burning vehicle in Afghanistan because it was the right thing to do. I never expected to see him again, and I certainly never expected him to save my family. Maybe it's not so strange, Maria said softly. Maybe it's just proof that good deeds come back to us when we need them most. Michael nodded, remembering Judge Chen's words about heroes being remembered rather than forgotten. For too many years, he had felt invisible, irrelevant, diminished by disability and unemployment. Today he had been reminded that his worth as a human being wasn't determined by what he could or couldn't do, but by what he had already done and who he had chosen to be. Within weeks of the court hearing, Michael's life began to transform in ways he couldn't have imagined. Judge Chen connected him with a non-profit organization that helped veterans navigate benefits and employment opportunities. Michael was offered a position as a Veteran Services Coordinator, earning 3,200 Bundestage per month, more than double his disability benefits. The job came with health insurance that covered Maria and the children, and for the first time since his injury, Michael had both financial security and professional purpose. His military leadership skills, combined with his personal understanding of disability challenges, made him an ideal advocate for veterans facing similar difficulties. Richard Morrison also kept his word. He not only forgave the debt and reduced the rent, but he established an emergency assistance fund to help other veteran families facing housing crises. The experience with Michael had opened his eyes to the struggles many veterans faced after their service ended. 3 months later, Michael received a phone call that would expand his impact beyond Phoenix. The caller was from the Department of Veterans Affairs, offering him a regional director position overseeing veteran transition services across the Southwest. The salary was $65,000 per year, and the role would allow him to develop programs preventing other veterans from experiencing the struggles he had endured. Maria was able to enroll in a nursing program, pursuing the career she had dreamed about before financial survival became their only priority. With stable housing and Michael's new income, the family could finally plan for the future instead of just surviving day to day. 6 months after that terrifying day in court, Michael Torres addressed a conference of veteran service providers in Denver. Looking out at the audience of counselors, caseworkers, and advocates, he shared the lesson that had transformed his life. 6 months ago, I sat in a courtroom facing eviction, feeling like a failure as a husband and father. I thought my military service was ancient history, irrelevant to my civilian struggles, Michael said from behind the podium, his wheelchair positioned so that everyone could see him clearly. But I learned something important that day. Our service doesn't end when we leave the military. The values we learned, courage, integrity, service to others, those values are needed just as much in civilian life. Michael's voice grew stronger as he continued. Every veteran faces challenges that civilians can't fully understand. Some deal with physical injuries, others with invisible wounds, some struggle with employment, housing, or family relationships. But I want every veteran to remember, your service matters. Your sacrifices have meaning, and your future can be brighter than your past. The applause that followed wasn't just polite recognition. It was the sound of hope being rekindled in hearts that had forgotten what it felt like to believe in tomorrow. As Michael returned home to Phoenix that evening, he reflected on the strange arithmetic of heroism. In Afghanistan, he had saved 5 lives in a single day. But the ripple effects of that action, carried forward through Judge Chen's compassion, Richard Morrison's transformation, and his own determination to help other veterans, had now touched hundreds of lives. That night, as the Torres family sat together on their apartment balcony, Diego asked his father a question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Papi, do you ever wish things had been different? That you hadn't been hurt in the war?" Michael considered the question carefully. It was one he had asked himself countless times over the years, usually during his darkest moments, when pain and frustration overwhelmed his determination to keep going. "You know, mijo," Michael finally said, "I used to wish that every day. I wished I could walk, wished I could play sports with you, wished our family didn't have to struggle with money and medical appointments." He reached over and touched his son's hair. "But if none of that had happened, I never would have learned how strong your mother is, or how brave you and Sophia are. And I never would have met Judge Chen again, or helped Richard Morrison change his heart, or been able to help all those veteran families find housing and jobs." Michael gestured toward the city lights spreading out before them. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us create opportunities for the best things we'll ever do." Diego nodded, processing wisdom that seemed advanced for his young years, but made perfect sense in the context of their family's journey. As they prepared to go inside for the night, Michael took one last look at the city where his life had been transformed by an unexpected reunion with an old comrade. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, and new chances to prove that heroes aren't born, they're forged in the crucible of adversity, and refined by the choice to keep serving others, even when service becomes difficult. The wheelchair that had once seemed like a symbol of limitation had become a platform for leadership, a reminder of sacrifice, and a tool for connecting with others who needed to know that their struggles didn't define their worth. Michael Torres had learned to walk again, not with his legs but with his heart, his mind, and his unwavering commitment to serving others. And in doing so, he had discovered that true mobility isn't about the body you have, but about the life you choose to live within it. Share this story and click the notification bell so you can be immediately notified of these stories we publish every day. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow I have another story especially for you.